Shabbat Shalom, brothers and sisters. Once again, we are again in another Torah portion, another Parashat that we will talk a little bit about. That is the Parashat Toledot. Toledot means generations or chronicles. In this Torah portion, we will talk about the twins, which is Yaakov and Esau. Why is it that is so relevant today and also back in those days? And also, what is the lineage or the chronicles of generations of Mashiach? We will talk about also what is the relevance of Mashiach and that has influence for the last 2,000 years. And why is it that the Tzaddik or the righteous always are mingled with the enemies? Or hidden, in other words. We will talk about all those little things. And right before we start, we'll encourage you to subscribe if you have not subscribed, so you can get the latest on every production that we are working on, which we are working very hard to bring you, all of you, the best that we can provide as far as Torah portions and also teachings as well. Let's jump into it. In this Torah portion, once again, we'll delve into nuances here and there, and what is it that we can learn about our forefathers. Chapter 25, verse 19 to 28, verse 9 is number 6 of Torah portion, Parashat. Here is the Toledot, the generations of Yitzhak, the son of Abraham. Abraham begot Yitzhak. Right off the bat, we see quite a few things here. The word Toledot, the way it is spells, is not the way you write it down. But we will delve into in the Hebrew in a few moments. But here we see the generations of Yitzhak. He is the promised son of Abraham, my forefather. Abraham, when he begot Yitzhak, is so important to understand all these words, because we understand more why is it that the Creator delves into quite a few things in the Hebrew. And that's what it's all about, to delve into the Hebrew. This word, Toledot, we see that when it comes to Yitzhak, there's a wow in the very beginning, and also in the word Esau, when it comes to his generation, the Toledot, the wow appears in the very last one, which means that Yahweh always bring us, even though he was the firstborn, but Yitzhak became the firstborn right after that. Esau, because of the Yitzhak generation, Esau, Yaakov was the second born of Esau, because Esau happens to be the first one to come out of the womb. But we understand that Yaakov takes the reins, and we'll see why we are talking about that. Chapter 25, verse 19 in the Targum Yonatan, these are the generations of Yitzhak bar Abraham. And because Yitzhak's appearance resembles Abraham's appearance, the Son of Man said, indeed, Abraham begot Yitzhak. And there is a very good reason why we state these statements and also this reference, is because if you really think about how people are always going to be talking about other people. It's just like today. In the time of our forefathers, they were the same. People always going to whisper. People always going to rumor. People always going to talk about Lashon Hara, which is basically talking about people's back. And so that gives us to believe that, do you imagine if Yitzhak was not going to appear the same resemblance as his father Abraham? People would talk about. People talk about that Sarah had some kind of affair with somebody else to have that baby. But indeed, Yahweh is not like that. He made this happen, and the way to make this happen, and I will bring it right off the bat, where our forefather, he indeed made this happen as far as Abraham, or in the other words, Yitzhak resembles the same as Abraham. He looked exactly as his father to make sure that people would talk about not negative, but rather positive. And let me give you a few examples when I say this. You see the son on the right side, there is the father on the left. There is a son on the right, there's a father on the left. There is the son on the right, there's a father on the left as well. And we see the son on the right, we see the father on the left. We see very much resemblance of the father and son. And it is same foreshadow of Mashiach and our Father Yahweh. I'm not going to get tired of saying this because Mashiach is the essence of Yahweh. He is the one who represents Yahweh in this era. And it's almost similar as Yahoseph and Pharaoh. Pharaoh was all the way in the back, kicking back, but he gave all the power and authority to Yahoseph. But he always was checking up with Pharaoh. It's very clear. He always was. If you read the Torah and other scripts, we will see that he was always checking with the Pharaoh, making sure that everything was running well and everything was balanced. Let's continue. This word, Yitzhak et Yalach, which means Yitzhak Aleph Tau Yalach. He begot Yitzhak, which is Abraham, but the word it is Aleph Tau. We see pretty much here how the Creator made this happen, and the way He made this happen is when Yahweh inserts the Aleph Tau here. We can see pretty much the Mashiach as foreshadow of our forefathers. Let's move on. Chapter 2, verse 4. These are the Toledot, the generations, the chronicles of the Shemayim heavens and the earth when they were created on the day that Yahweh Almighty made the earth and the Shemayim, the heavens. But it's interesting to know that in this very verse, there are two letter wows, which are in red, which means that the letter wow is the numeric value is 6. Which day was man made? Which day of the creation? And he was made on the 6th day. We see pretty much here the perfection of Adam before the falling of man, and we see the full perfection having two wows. Chapter 5, verse 1. This is the book of the Toledot, generations of men. In the day that Yahweh made Adam, in the image of Ayil Almighty, He made them. And it is interesting to know that after the fall of Adam, we only going to see one wow. What happened to the other wow? And that was because man's fall. After he sinned, we see that one wow disappear, and we see the degradation of mankind. But it is amazing because this same wording and the same wow appears in chapter 25, verse 19. And here are the Toledot in the beginning of this Torah portion, when the word Toledot again appears, and Yitzhak is still under Yitzhak's generation still retains one wow. But let's go a little bit forward. You will see that in the generation of Jismael, chapter 25, verse 12, here are the Toledot, the generations, the chronicles of Jismael, the son of Abraham. We see that here we do not see or no wow appears in this word Toledot. We can see pretty much the degradation of the DNA, in other words. Let me stop here for a moment. We can see pretty much that DNA are all the same, but when it comes to the degradation of mankind, we can see pretty much that here actually fails completely in the generation of Jismael. And that way we can understand in the first hand that DNA, at least the generation of Yitzhak retains at least one wow. But we see in this generation that completely there is no wows at all. Now, let's see the opposite and the negative. We can see that here in chapter 4, verse 18 of Ruth, here's the Peretz genealogy. Peretz was Hezron's father. Here we see that once again, the two wows appear once again since the very beginning of creation. That leads us to believe that this is the lineage of Mashiach. We can see that our Mashiach restores once again the two wows, because this is the generation that follows. Chapter 1, verse 3, who being the brightness of the kabod or esteem, and the very expression of the essence of Yahweh, and sustaining all things with the devour or the word of his wording. Now, let me jump in a little bit here. Let me pause here for a moment. We can pretty much understand that our Mashiach is the reflection of Yahweh. But the source of everything, I want to make it clear, and I want to be completely clear, crystal clear when I say this. Yahweh is the creator of all things. Mashiach is the action of Yahweh. Why? Because it is the word of Yahweh. When Yahweh spoke, the word was the Mashiach. But the one that gives the command, it is Yahweh. It's the same as us. When we speak, who's speaking? Us. But the word that we release to make this happen, there's an action. That was Mashiach. But the one giving the command is the person, the identity, the person, the character. The same is Yahweh Sebaot. We can go into the New Testament or the Chronicles of Yahushua, or what they call it today, the New Testament, and we can see pretty much how the Mashiach always putting his Father on the highest, always giving the Father the credit of everything. Even the scriptures themselves says very clear that not even the Son knows when he will return. Only the Father. It says very clear. That makes us even more so to believe that Yahweh has the ultimate saying. Chapter 25, verse 20. Let's move on a little bit more. Yitzhak was 40 years old when he took Rivkah or Rebekah, and the daughter of Bethuel, the Arami of Aram, and the sister of Laban, the Arami, to be his wife. This is a place, Padam Aram, where Laban, happens to be the sister of Rivkah. But here Yitzhak is taking that beautiful woman, which is Rivkah, to be his wife, but the source or the place where she's coming from is not very well known or very good name or a very good reputation. And there is a reason why, because the place where the Laban was, or that area or that region, was not well taken. Laban the Arami, backwards the Arami, the word is Ramai, which is deceiver. That place was well known to be a place where people love to deceive one another. Laban happens to be one of them. And we can see pretty much in the next Torah portion where Yaakov is being deceived by his own uncle, Laban. And later we will talk about that. But let's move on. Arami in Hebrew, if you put it backwards, will give you Ramai, which is deceiver. Now, chapter 25, verse 21, Yitzhak interceded with Yahweh for his wife because he was barren. Yahweh heard her prayer, and Rivka conceived. We are following the pattern all the time, and we see how our forefathers, especially our mothers, they have been going through so many problems having babies. But Yahweh always hears the tzaddik, always hear the righteous. And there is a reason why, is to test our emunah, our faithfulness. If we are continuing to keep what Yahweh has given us from the very beginning. Now, he says very clear that they pray, they ask for the Creator to let them have what he promised in the very beginning. Let's go into the book of Targum Yonatan on this verse. Jigsaw went to the mountain of worship. Is Moreh. We already know that. The place where his father has bound him, which is the Akedah. And Yitzhak in his prayer turned attention to Yahweh of what he had decreed over him, who had no children. And he was enlarged, and Rivka, his wife, had a son. Here we can see pretty much why is it that they literally had to go all the way up there where Jigsaw was bound. Remember that Abraham was going to kill him as a sacrifice, but that never happened, of course. But we can see that they went back to that same place to ask for a favor, to ask to bear a baby. And Yahweh, of course, he listened to the prayer. 25:23, who replied, "There are two nations in your womb." That was later when she was already impregnated. From birth, they will be two rival peoples. One of these peoples will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. We already know who became the stronger, which was Yaakov, and the weaker became Esau. It is kind of backwards because Esau was the first one and Yaakov was the second. But once again, even our Mashiach said the first will be last and the last will be first. Here, there's a real good reason why Yahweh chose this. Book of Yashar 26 verse 10, she went to Shem and Heber, her son, to ask questions about them in this manner. And they would seek Yahweh in this thing. And he also asked Abraham to seek and ask Yahweh about all that happened to him. They all asked Yahweh about this matter and said the word to Yahweh and said unto him, two children are in thy womb, and two nations shall rise from them, and one nation will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. It is amazing because she seek not just one answer, which I think is pretty much given that it is for us to learn about our forefathers when we want an answer. For example, if you want to go to the doctor, he's not just going to believe one doctor. You need to get a second opinion, third opinion, fourth opinion if it's possible. Here in this situation with our mother, she went to three different people. Shem, which happens to be Melchizedek, right? His son, Eber. And then later he went to Abraham. And they all asked and they all received the same answer. That means whatever answer was, which was the same, it was truth. It was accurate. And there was no fluctuation of might not be true. Targum Jonathan on 25:23, Yahweh said to him, two peoples are in your womb, two kingdoms to your womb will be separated, and one kingdom will be stronger than the other, and the greater will serve the younger. If the children of the younger keep the mitzvot or the commandments of Yahweh, they will be blessed. And you can keep reading. I just brought a little portion of it, but here's we can pretty much see what the Creator have in store for them. 25:30. Yaakov said to Yaakov, who was this? It was Esau. Please let me gobble some of that red thing. That red thing. I'm exhausted, for he was called red. Yaakov answered, first sell me this on this day your birthrights. Now, one thing we can learn from our fathers, it is how to make deals, how to make sure, how to seal the deal, how to seal any kind of matter, but in a very lawful way. The problem nowadays is that we only use our verbal vocage, right? We only say things up in the air, and in reality, we need to learn a little bit of our forefathers. In the case of Yaakov, he asked his brother Esau that, do you want this? Do you want this food that I'm cooking? Well, you're going to have to sell me your birthright. See, for Esau, his birthright and or the blessings were nothing, because he was nothing to be excited about. He was more concerned about the wilderness, the field hunting. But when it comes to the things of Yahweh, his commandments, learning Torah, not at all. He was not interested whatsoever. That's one of the reasons why his birthright was worthless. And he ended up selling it to Yaakov. But we have to once again ask these questions to you. Do you think that he just sold it like this verbally? Do you know that Esau was kind of a trickster? He knew how to deceive others. And do you think that just by saying, yeah, I'll sell it to you, later he would turn around and say, I never said such a thing? That's one of the reasons why Yaakov have him sign a deal, sign a contract, make this sealed, and I'll show you that I'm not making this up. Yasher 27:12, and he said to his brother, behold, I would die today, and why then do I want the birthright? You see, this is Esau's words. And Yaakov acted wisely with Esau in this manner. Esau sold his birthright to Yaakov because so did Yahweh. So in other words, this is what Yahweh wanted to happen. And this is exactly what happened in the case of Yaakov and Esau. Yaakov acted wisely by have him sell his right and also notarize this in a piece of paper. And it's exactly what we need to do today. Any kind of transactions, we need to have a document. We need to have receipts. It's like when you go into to a court of law. The judge pretty much is going to ask you, do you have any, whatever case you're bringing, they're going to ask you for evidence. They're going to ask you for receipts, and you need to have them at hand. It's just simple as that. If you don't have any evidence, if you don't have any receipts, then the judge is going to tell you, you know what, you guys need to get out of here. I don't need you. You're wasting my time. And it's exactly what happened in the case of Yaakov. He actually notarized this. And let me continue here. on that portion of Esau in the cave of the field, the Machpelah, we talked about this before, which Abraham had bought from his son Het for a great possession, Esau also sold to Jacob. And Jacob bought all this from his brother Esau for the value given. And what was the value given? It was a dish of lentils, red lentils, something insignificant. For him, his birthright was nothing for him. In his eyes was nothing. But Yaakov, of course, he acted very, very smart. And that's, once again, one thing we need to learn from our forefathers. Okay, let's continue with this. Joshua 27, verse 14. Yaakov wrote all this in a book and testified to it with witnesses. And what else? Sealed it, and the book was left with Yaakov's hand. And exactly what happened later, that we will talk about that, not right now, but a little later, in the case of Joseph. Okay, Joseph, later when he went to bury his father Yaakov, okay, Israel, he brought the papers, he brought these documents, he brought the receipts, made sure that everything was according to the law. If anybody could say anything, he had all the receipts to show that whatever he had in possession, it was his. And last week, last Shabbat, we talked about the Abraham, how he was able to buy that piece of land with the cave, and he did not want it for free, because there's nothing free in this world. There's nothing free that we can pretty much say, this is mine, verbally. People can say whatever they want to say. If they want to say that this is yours, but in reality it isn't, because you need to have some kind of papers. And that's what they wanted. They wanted to give it to him for free. But in reality, 10, 20, 40, 60 years can pass, and they can turn around and say, you know what? That land is mine. I still have my papers, documents. And that's why Abraham saw the future, that he needed to have it sealed in a piece of paper as a contract that that piece of land was his. And exactly what happened here. The beracha, the blessing, let's talk about a little bit about that. Yaakov and Esau were 63 years old when the blessing was imparted by making Yitzhak 123 years old and died at the age of 180 years old. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because Yitzhak thought by giving the blessing to either Esau or Yaakov, or in this case was Yaakov, he thought he was going to die soon. But he still have 57 years more to go, and so he thought he was going to die very soon, but that was not the case. 27 verse 15, Rebekah took the blessed clothes of Esau, her oldest son, which she had with her in the house, and put them on Jacob's, her youngest son. The question is, what kind of clothes were this? And this was none other than the clothes or the piece of garment that Adam had after the fall of Adam. This was passed on through Shem, and Shem is supposed to give it to the next generation or to Noah, but Ham stole it and gave it to his son Nimrod. Nimrod passed it on to the next son, and we came to know that Esau killed the second Nimrod, and that's one of the reasons why he was running, almost dying because he was being chased on, that he had those clothing. And that these clothing then ended up in the hands of Rivka, which Rivka gave it to his son Yaakov. Now, the reason why I'm bringing all this backstory is for you and I to understand something very important, and that is in the avodah, in the service of Yahweh, there has to be some kind of line or lineage of service to service of Yahweh, to of a priesthood. In other words, the kehunot. That's what it's called in Hebrew. These kehunot, this priesthood, have to have a lineage, and Shem had that lineage of Melchizedek. See, one of the reasons why we have to understand all this is because these clothes that he put on was part of the service of Yahweh on the priesthood. Having the first right, having the blessing, and having these clothes, he was going to be the next Melchizedek. But you have to understand this: when he dies, or rather, he gave it to, remember, the Yaakov Israel became the father of the 12 children of Israel. The three attributes of Melchizedek are Melech, which is a king, prophet, and priest. Once again, is king, prophet, and priest. These attributes, Mashiach comes and pick them up and to restore them again. Now, that's one of the reasons why Yaakov needed to have all those three things: firstborn, blessing, and the clothing. And it's exactly what he was going to have in that particular moment. Genesis 27:15, Targun Jonathan, and Rivka took the nice garments of Esau, his oldest son, who he had previously been Adam's, but that day Esau hasn't been on it, and he stayed with her in the house, and with them he clothed Yaakov, his son. Now, we are bringing a lot of evidence and a lot of reference for us to understand why it was very important for him to have it. 27:22, Yaakov came to Yitzhak his father, who touched him and said, "The voice is the voice of Yaakov, but the hands are the hands of Esau." And it's exactly what's going on today. It's a foreshadow. These wordings are nothing but a prophecy that was ultimately passed on to our forefathers, and ultimately was passed on to Mashiach. Why am I saying this? It's because our forefathers are being masqueraded in the midst of the enemies. In other words, they're being hid on in the midst of the enemies. I'll give an example. Yosef. Where was Yosef? He was in Egypt. He masqueraded as a what? As an Egyptian. Esther, she was the queen of Assyria, right? But she was a Jew. Another one, we can go to Mashiach. He's been sold for 2,000 years for 30 pieces of gold to Edom. To Edom, which is the Christian world. But now we need to bring them out. And once again, all these are prophecies that I'm talking about. Okay? And let's continue. Look at what it says here in Isaiah 30, verse 20. Though Yahweh has given you the lechem, or bread, or scarcity, and water of oppression, your teacher, your Moreh, will hide no more, but your eyes will behold your Moreh, or your teacher. And who do you think is this rabbi, this Moreh? It is our Mashiach. He's the one who no longer is going to hide anymore, because he's being hiding, he's being hidden in the Christian world. And that's one of the reasons why our Mashiach has been sold for 30 pieces of gold for 2,000 years. Do you imagine that? Look at what it says here. All this is, even our Jewish brothers know about this. 63 verse 1 of Isaiah. Who's that coming from Edom? Where is Edom? The Christianity. a bust wrapped in garments and stained with crimson, so magnificently dressed, so majestic in his great power? Is it I who speaks triumphantly? I very qualified to say. Verse 2, why is your attire Edom? Why is your attire red? Your clothes like someone who has stepped into the winepress. And it's exactly what Mashiach will do in the very last era, which, by the way, we are living in the last era. But when he returns, he will slaughter all the nations, starting with those who knew better, but they did not follow the Torah of Yahweh. Let's continue. The idea is like the ancient redeemers, Yahusef, Moses in Egypt, Esther in Persia, and Melech HaMashiach will be hidden among the enemies of Israel. And it's exactly what has happened. It's exactly what our forefathers are been doing it for some time. What it was, it will be again. The past repeats itself. Now we're closing. Thank you so much for being with us. And I will urge you once again to subscribe if you have not subscribed, so you can get the latest production, which there's one coming soon in this very week. We'll see you next time. I'm Rapha'Yah. We'll see you in Shabbat Shalom.
Toledot. If you like this video, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. There's more content in production. Thank you.